Welcome to the Daily Gospel Breakdown. Today we're going through Mark chapter 14, breaking down the historical context, deeper themes, what it reveals about Jesus, and how it still connects to our lives today. Let's get into it. Mark 14. Mark chapter 14 is one of the most emotionally intense chapters in the entire Gospel of Mark. The tension that has been building throughout the Gospel finally begins reaching its climax as betrayal, fear, sacrifice, loyalty, weakness, and suffering all converge around the final hours before Jesus' crucifixion. The chapter begins with religious leaders actively searching for a way to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him without causing public unrest. Their opposition toward Jesus has steadily intensified throughout Mark, and now the conflict is becoming final and unavoidable. Immediately afterward, Mark presents a striking contrast. While some plot Jesus' death, a woman anoints Jesus with expensive perfume in Bethany. The perfume was extremely valuable, and some people criticize her, arguing it should have been sold and given to the poor. But Jesus defends her act, saying she has anointed his body beforehand for burial. This moment carries deep symbolic meaning. The woman recognizes something many others still fail to fully understand. Jesus is moving towards suffering and death. Throughout the Gospels, moments like this often highlight how unexpected people sometimes perceive spiritual truth more clearly than religious insiders or even the disciples themselves. The chapter then shifts to Judas Iscariot agreeing to betray Jesus to the chief priests. Mark does not spend much time explaining Judas's internal motivations, which has led to centuries of discussion and debate among Christians and scholars. But the betrayal itself becomes one of the most tragic moments in the gospel narrative because it comes from someone within Jesus' own inner circle. Next comes the preparation for Passover. Passover commemorated God delivering Israel from slavery in Egypt, and this setting is deeply important because Mark is connecting Jesus' coming death to themes of sacrifice, redemption, and deliverance. During the Last Supper, Jesus shares bread and wine with his disciples and gives them new symbolic meaning. He says the bread represents his body and the cup represents his blood of the covenant poured out for many. This becomes foundational for Christian communion traditions throughout history. The scene is powerful because Jesus knows betrayal, suffering, and death are approaching, yet he continues teaching, serving, and preparing his followers. The Last Supper is not merely about ritual. It points toward sacrifice, forgiveness, covenant, and reconciliation between God and humanity. Jesus then predicts that his disciples will fall away and that Peter, despite his confidence, will deny him 3 times before morning. Peter strongly insists he would never do such a thing, but Jesus warns him anyway. This moment highlights a recurring biblical theme. Human beings often overestimate their own strength and faithfulness. The chapter then moves into Gethsemane, one of the most deeply human and emotionally raw moments in the Gospels. Jesus goes to pray while his disciples repeatedly fall asleep. Mark describes Jesus as deeply distressed and troubled. He prays that if possible, the cup might pass from him, yet ultimately submits himself to the Father's will. This scene is significant because it reveals both Jesus' humanity and his obedience. Christians have long reflected on Gethsemane as a moment showing that courage is not the absence of anguish or fear, but faithfulness despite it. Soon afterward, Judas arrives with an armed crowd and identifies Jesus with a kiss, a symbol of friendship turned into betrayal. Jesus is arrested while many of the disciples flee in fear. Mark then describes Jesus standing trial before the religious council. Witnesses attempt to accuse him, though their testimonies conflict. Finally, the high priest directly asks Jesus whether he is the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One. Jesus responds by declaring that they will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. This statement is enormously important because Jesus combines imagery from Psalm 110 and Daniel 7, passages associated with divine authority and exaltation. For the religious leaders, this was understood as blasphemy, and they condemn him. Meanwhile, Peter waits outside in the courtyard. Despite earlier promises of loyalty, fear overtakes him, and he denies knowing Jesus 3 separate times. When the rooster crows, Peter realizes what has happened and breaks down weeping. The chapter ends with a profound contrast between Jesus and Peter. Jesus remains faithful under suffering, rejection, and humiliation, while Peter collapses under fear and pressure. Yet, the gospel story does not end with Peter's failure. One of the deeper themes throughout Christianity is that failure, weakness, and fear do not necessarily have the final word. Mark 14 ultimately explores betrayal, sacrifice, fear, loyalty, suffering, and human weakness in an incredibly personal way. It reveals Jesus moving willingly towards suffering while those around him struggle with confusion, fear, and failure. Yet even amid darkness and collapse, the chapter continues pointing toward God's larger redemptive purpose, unfolding through the events ahead. Thanks for joining me for today's Daily Gospel Breakdown. If this study helped you better understand the chapter or gave you something meaningful to reflect on, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. I plan on continuing through the Gospel of Mark chapter by chapter, one day at a time. I'd also love to hear your thoughts and interpretations in the comments. See you in the next study.